Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the HGLRC Petrel 120x Pro. This is the 4S edition. The all-in-one board down in here is the Zeus 25, which is an F7 flight controller and a 25 amp ESC. It is a 32-bit ESC, but they do not have RPM filtering turned on. Also inside that stack is the Zeus Nano VTX that goes up to 350 milliwatts. Our FPV camera is a Caddx Ant Lite, and we've got 1404 4800 kV motors on Gemfan 3810 3-inch bibladed propellers. I'm finding a lot of listings for this quad with 1303.5 motors. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I've got 1404s. It also has the HGLRC Hammer circular polarized antenna, and it is on a bendy stem. Battery strap with a buckle, rubberized battery mat with a mesh. Got a low ESR capacitor, looks like it's 35 volts, 220 microfarads. Flight stack is soft mounted. Here's a look at the weave, and they did secure the motor wires down using my favorite Emax tape, or whatever tape this is actually called. Mine came with an FrSky XM Plus, so you can see my antennas using the zip tie and heat shrink method to secure them down. It weighs about 89.3 grams. I flew it on these two batteries. They're both 4S. The top battery is the Race Day Quads, which is essentially a GNB as well, 650 milliamp, which will be their first flight, and the lower battery, which is 450 milliamp. 450 is recommended, but I think most of us like 650 more. And with the 650 milliamp 4S battery, it weighs just over 149 grams. With the 4S 450 milliamp battery, it weighs 141.3 grams. It's the unibody bottom plate, which is 3 millimeters thick. Arms look to be 5 millimeters wide, and everything is chamfered for that smooth feel. Motor post to motor post, I am getting 120 millimeters. Okay, so we're going to see three things. We've got this first flight we're going to look at right here, which is a 650 milliamp 4S battery. Next, we'll see a 4S 450 milliamp GNB, and then we have a dead-on crash. Of course, as you could hear, the wind is blowing, and it is blowing 24 miles an hour according to the weather data, and gusts over 30 miles an hour. So this little beast, and in my opinion, for a micro, it is a pretty good beast. Can fly and handle wind. So if you live in a place like I do where the wind blows on occasion, yeah, you can fly this one just fine in the wind. Of course, down low to the ground and behind the houses, the wind isn't 24 miles an hour. But up above the house, we're seeing every bit of that wind right over the treetops. I did change the tune out of box. The tune had some kind of shrills, especially in recovery from dives. And when you did hard 180 turns, you could kind of hear it a little bit. And whenever the tune's off, I always worry about the efficiency of the battery. I will show you the PID values that I used. I didn't mess with filtering. I just did PID values. I'm not 100% behind my tune, but I do think it's 30% better than the tune that comes out of the box. So I'll put that on screen when we get back to the desk to talk about some of the finer points. I don't want to interrupt your viewing pleasure watching this flight with a image of the PIDs, and I will use an image. I can put a dump file, a CLI dump file down in the video description below that you can download. Not just my PIDs, but everything. Maybe you buy one, you flash, and you find you can't get it tuned, or you're having troubles and you want to go back. That can be handy. I do think, I heard Blunty was collecting PID tunes. Maybe I got that wrong. He might be collecting, he's collecting versions of the FrSky receivers, I think. Maybe possibly OpenPX. Yeah, I think that's what he's. Anyway, sorry, I got off sidetrack there. About at 3 minutes, if you don't stick around much longer, we'll scrub forward to about 3 minutes. I got a little bit of a whole shot coming up for you. Now that the trees are getting some leaves on it and kind of closing in around some of those bigger gaps, it gets a little bit more interesting, at least visually stimulating. Some asked me to do some specific kind of tricks, which I have worked on sparingly. One is an inverted yaw spin, but I have found that to be ugly and sloppy with the 40-degree camera angle that I'm typically at. So even with something like this that could give me, several seconds of hang time, doing the yaw spin while inverted and then coming down, I'm not proficient at it, and I've felt very uncomfortable. I don't want to come down on my neighbor's house. So I've actually been practicing that with the much smaller, lower power micros, staying within the confines of my space and not going up way high. But I do work on things, of course, when you do, here's the whole shot. And you can see I kind of panicked, kind of held down on the throttle a little bit longer than I needed to, and ended up doing that kind of overcorrection with the throttle and came back down. We're going to end the flight here right at about 3 minutes, And when we get back to the home screen, it's going to be a voltage of 3.63 volts per cell, which is just about where I want it to be when I land. Usually closer to 3.5 is my preference, so we could easily get another 5 seconds of flight. Next up is our 450 milliamp 4S battery, and wind's still blowing, but not quite as bad. Different day, you know, but still blowing. I don't have that weather data with me. I just wrote down the weather data for the really windy flight because it's calmer than that, but still somewhat windy. And you know, basically I'm doing the same things I always do in reviews. Some people appreciate that, some people don't. It's what works out for me. If I had to go somewhere to go fly quads all the time, I probably wouldn't be doing reviews. I just wouldn't be able to fly enough. But flying in the backyard is still very fun for me. I enjoy it every time I go out back, and hopefully you enjoy the flights as well. Or it gives you a unit of measurement in some way that you can compare one quad to the next when it comes to being what, if you're going to buy motors or props, or you're going to build out a frame, or if you're going to buy a bind and fly like this one. It gives you something to measure it against because it's consistency in the flight arena. But we're going to have another close call with that hole on the shed side again coming up. There we go. Well, a little correction. Yeah, I looked like a pro there, or somewhat like a pro. Made the correction in there, just missed catching those branches, and then came down relatively calmly. But that's a lot of fun. I like hitting that hole now that the trees are filling in. This is going to make it more fun to fly. I was always a little bit stressed about how far those branches reached when we were in those months that it wasn't so green. I couldn't see those branches all the time necessarily, and I didn't know how far their little fingers reached out over that hole. So I had to be a little bit conservative, but you know, we all make mistakes. Sometimes it goes the wrong way. But on 4S, we're going to get about 2.5 minutes of flight. And I don't think I'm being as aggressive, as consistently as I was in the 650, and I think that's because I'm just aware that the battery isn't holding its voltage. You can feel it as well as visually on the screen because I have warnings turned on, so low battery warnings come on all the time, and that way I know when I should try to come in and land. Again, I do have PIDs. I'll show you back at the desk those PIDs. This flight should be wrapping up relatively soon. The grass is looking nice. That's happy, and we've done some mulching around back. You'll see that coming up. That was just this past weekend we did some mulching. You can't really see it in this video, but coming up in a future video you'll notice we've got some red mulch in our flower beds, especially out front. Okay, the flight is finally ended. We go back to the home screen. Just a touch long, maybe 5 seconds too long on the flight. You know, we're at 3.45, 3.46 volts per cell. Next up is my dead-on crash, and I'm going to show you the whole flight because the flight only lasts about a minute, and it's kind of entertaining. We're going to see RX loss. I hit the swing set coming around a corner, almost blind. I was just, you know, on the verge of being in control, but not quite, and I cut the corner too close, and I wanged into the swing set. This was a crash where I thought, something might be damaged here, and I was pleased to go and find it, and really nothing's wrong with it. I couldn't find any sort of cracking in the laminations within the carbon fiber, no motor problem. You know, my prop is a little bit bent up, but I just kept flying it, you know. And even the RX loss, that was kind of a strange thing. Oh, see how far it flies backwards? I could have recovered out of that. Let's go back a little bit. As it flies, you see that RX loss. If we wouldn't have had the RX loss, and I didn't have the habit of disarming so quickly on impact, we could have recovered from that. So you saw that one crash, and I think it really messed up this prop a little bit. See how it's kind of gnarled up here a little bit. Not terrible, though, but I really felt like I hit this center bar, and it really, it just whipped it around, and then I went flying backwards through the air, which was kind of interesting and fun. But I was pretty concerned, but, you know, here it is. You know, everything's fine. Oh, flex test too, by the way. I would like to take a moment to talk about the twig. You know, we've seen this design come out a lot since the twig from Racer X. Brian Graves, he designed this. He's got a whole line of the twig series. He's twig tank, twig thick. He's got a lot of different ones, but I think this might have been the first to actually kind of hit the review circuit. And, you know, while not identical, It is very, very similar. And you know, for all those people out there that might be looking at this design or things like it, you know, remember what Brian did for the community and designing this frame and kind of making this form factor popular. And a lot of people have these and are flying them. And, you know, it's really fun quality. Of course, now we'd put different motors on it because we didn't even have, there was one 1204 motor out at the time that this was made, and it was from a GearBest product, a Cyclone or something like that. I can't remember the name of the quad. Mine lit on fire right on the table. Second flight lit on fire. So that was a hugely failed product. But at that point in time, we just didn't have 1204s. Now we have all sorts of 1204s and 1303s and 1302s. We got all sorts of micro motors. So if you're building one like this, while these are good motors and it's good fun, 1105, I think you'd probably be better off and happier if you went with a 1200 or even a 13 or 1400 size motor. Remember, more motor weight you get out of the end means that the durability can go down when you strike. But I just wanted to take a moment to harken back to Racer X and the work that he did bringing the Twig to market some 2 years ago, because we've really seen a lot of companies take advantage of this design or this inspiration from his design. Thank you very much. Okay, back to the Petrel, right? Petrel? Is that how you pronounce it? I've been corrected a lot of times. So I'm a little bit curious about these motors because on some of the retail listings, I'm not finding these motors. So if you're wanting to buy one of these, one of the things to be careful of is these motors. Make sure it shows that in the product listing, or email the vendor that you're looking at this through, whether it's Race Day Quads, Pyro Drone, maybe you're down in Australia and you're with ordering from Phaser, or whoever you might be ordering from. You know, if you like what you saw, 1404. There's also a 2S version, which I'm very interested in. I'm always interested in 2S. 2S has been something I've been exploring relatively consistently over the last 2 years because I think 2S gets overlooked quite a bit. So if you want something that will run 2S batteries, of course, I don't have it, so I can't tell you about the performance. I presume the performance is going to be muted compared to this. This is kind of a monster compared to what I would expect a 2S version to be. But let's go over this real quick. One of the things I'm not crazy about, of course, the XM Plus came from the factory, is it's just kind of loose in here. It didn't cause me any problems, but of course, if I were making this, or if I would have put the XM in there, I would have added a little foam tape, double-sided foam tape underneath the receiver, just to keep it from moving around. I suspect from the way they have the wires, it's not going to move far, but I just don't like things jiggling around down here in our flight stack. Again, I'm a little bit surprised they did not have RPM filtering on or bidirectional D-shot on. It's got a 32-bit ESC on it. It should be able to do that just fine. I did not change that for this flight. I only changed the PIDs. Speaking of the PIDs, I'll put them right here on screen. Those are the PIDs I use, the numerical values that you go in for P, I, and D for each axis, and that's what I flew it on. I found that it to be much better than what it came with. As promised, my PIDs are on screen. They do secure the antenna in with a zip tie, and I do think having this flexible tubey thing is actually pretty nice. I kind of wish I could just buy some of that tube somewhere. It might be like airline tube for aquariums or something. I'm just not certain, but that could come in handy in some cases. I am a bit concerned about the canopy, but you know, I crashed it several times, and the canopy's in perfect shape. So my concern is unfounded. It's not, doesn't feel brittle. It feels hardy, especially up here where the camera is, because that makes everything harder. But you know, this is the only part you can really squeeze up. And when you make an impact, the whole stack, you know, because the canopy isn't supported by a nut underneath, it's only the nut on top, the whole thing is going to move a little bit. So the canopy will probably be fine. I can't imagine that breaking except for those extreme circumstances or the rare unlucky occasion. But I do think if they're going to make this canopy, I would prefer to see a nut right underneath the canopy down there, just to firm up the canopy and keep it away from banging into any of the other electronics. If you're wanting to use the button for the VTX, you can kind of see it back through there. Not great. So getting the button is going to be kind of a special challenge. Of course, on these, I always talk about the battery lead not being secured down. If it were me, I would take the battery lead, run it by this arm a little bit, and then run my zip tie across the battery lead in the arm and zip it down there, and then just plug my battery in down here. While we're looking at the bottom, I toilet tank my battery, which is a term I think some of us are using. I don't know where it came from, but it was a special challenge to get the battery strap through there. So that's something to keep in mind when you do yours. It doesn't come with a battery strap in there, so the easiest way is going to be able to fish it through a traditional way through those two holes. But I wanted the toilet tank, so I took the time to fish it down through those two much narrower holes. Works out. It's a little bit odd. We have this frame that has all these other mounting points on it. I'm not familiar with the product that they use with this frame that would be using those mounting holes. Looks like really good for a big thick rubber band for holding your battery on, but yeah, I probably wouldn't do it front to back though. Those would come off. But those side to side hooks look pretty good. Maybe this was a different product that I just haven't seen yet, and we'll see why they have those extra holes. Of course, if you're looking at just the frame, they do have, it looks like 20 by 20 and 16 millimeter mounting patterns for your flight stack in the frame. Yeah, it seems like good fun. It seems like high quality carbon. I crashed it about a number of times. I had those close calls in the video for the flights that I showed in the high winds, and I enjoyed myself with it. I enjoy all sorts of micros. It kind of, if you're like me, it kind of might depend on your attitude for the day or how you're feeling for the day. Maybe you've had an extra cup of coffee that morning, so you just want some raw power and speed. Other times you're wanting to do what I kind of call air skateboarding, where you're flying something much smaller, like the UR80, and you're just kind of doing swoopy moves, not high power moves, So let me know what you think of this one. Oh, the price point, I should get to that. Hold on one second, I apologize. Price point on this one is $169.99. Of course, it depends on which receiver you choose. The price goes up from there because that's the price without the receiver. And of course, as always, I'll have links down below in the video description to the product and where the product is being sold. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know down in the comment section below. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.